What's going on, guys? Kigerr here, and in today's video we're going to be talking to Eros Trinidad and see how he thinks the server New Stark City has progressed in the eyes of himself and collectively from Chaos Theory. Let's get into it. What's going on, guys? Kigerr here, and today I'm joined by Eros Trinidad, former CCC and leader of Chaos Theory Alliance on New Stark City. What's going on, man?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, of course. Well, anyone who saw the previous take on this was from NRG is Eternal, the leader of X-Men Gold, and I wanted to get every one of the top alliances ideas of how things went, and now we got Chaos Theory. Tell me, how did Chaos Theory start? Was it always Chaos Theory since the jump the game initially launches? Were you in a different alliance? Did you just make Chaos Theory? How'd that start?
My wife and I actually we pick up games pretty regularly, dip our feet in, start a group, and just see if it gets traction. We both love Marvel a lot, so we figured we'd kind of dive headfirst day one. We made Chaos Theory as a day one group. Um, we pushed as hard as we could, but there were a couple of groups that just got a little bit ahead of us, so they sort of had a fast track to recruiting some of the bigger, more aggressively pushing players. So we were a day one group, but it took us a little while to get some traction.
Okay. And from my talk with NRG, it sounds like after several weeks, a month, maybe 2 months, everyone kind of solidified into the groups that they were in.
Yeah, there was a couple of big roster moves like super early on, but after about a month or so, people really settled into one of the more aggressively pushing groups. Yeah.
And this was before the alliance rankings and stuff, so you just had to kind of guesstimate based off of the leaderboards of the other game modes, who was in what alliance, how those alliances are doing, things like that. How was Dark Zone during that time for you guys?
Dark Zone was a blast. Honestly, we took a very aggressive approach on all the PvE game modes. We just couldn't really secure a lot of the top end like PvP guys. Penthouses just had a really, really great recruitment strategy, and they were super active in all the PvP game modes. So we pushed easy a lot. We probably got about 50 something titles pre-merge,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, our best week was an 11-way tie, and we included a separate group the week after for a 7-way tie. We partnered with like Sigma Iron Legion and got them 3 titles. So pre-merge, there were only 3 clans or alliances rather that were able to get titles. It was us, those 3 that Sigma got, and Penthouses had like 4 or 5.
That's crazy because from the conversation with NRG before, he said it was mostly PvP stuff going on with Dark Zone on that server.
Yeah, they took that approach. We took a very different approach. They wanted to come in and bash skulls, and there were days that they would do that. They would come
And
into our
your style
runs.
ended up getting the titles, it sounds like.
Yeah, we had a pretty aggressive PvE focus. We would switch channels and focus just prime kills. We would do 60, 70 prime kills a night.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one week we did like 55 or 60,000 points. We just had a lot of fun killing bosses. I mean, that was really what we were about at the time.
And did killing those getting those 60, 70 boss kills and several titles, did that help your recruitment?
Oh yeah, it was definitely an asset, an advantage that our team was able to create. It was just a product of circumstance. There's no denying that there were other strong groups on the server that probably could have pushed for dominance in the game mode, but for whatever reason they didn't necessarily play it the way that we were playing it, so we were able to more or less run away with titles on a weekly basis.
I gotcha. Now, server merge happens. How was that in the eyes of Chaos Theory?
Well, server merges were hot. Right before the merges, we were in talks with Sigma Iron Legion because they were the only group sort of playing the game the way we were, sort of PvE focused with a couple PvP guys. but they ultimately decided that a merge with us wasn't in their best interest. They ended up merging into Elegy. So we took our attentions elsewhere. We had brief talks with PH, but that didn't really go anywhere. And then we worked out a merger with the Order, a group coming in from New Stark 7.
Okay.
But after about a week, we realized that our, wasn't necessarily a good fit on both sides. They sort of pulled the trigger and then ended up merging into penthouses instead.
Hmm.
And so we kind of got left holding the bag. We dropped like 20 people off the roster to make space for this merge, and then they pulled like 15 of those 20 people out of the out of the roster. Like,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, it was a lot. And we had a bunch of our guys in their roster to like refill their roster that just got cut one day. They just all found themselves without a group, so it was a
Oh
little chaotic for a
man.
little bit. Yeah,
That
wasn't a
is
lot.
that is pretty crazy. Oh man.
It was a good
I'm
time.
glad
I mean,
my
we worked it out.
alliance's recent merge went super smooth, and none of that happened with what we just did.
Yeah, consider yourself lucky because when they go south, they it's a lot of time spent in DMs trying to reassure people that
It
their gaming
definitely sounds
experience
like it.
is. Yeah.
So it sounds like merge happens, and then Penthouse got a big influx of people, and it sounds
Mhm.
like Elegy got a big influx, right?
Yeah, and I mean everyone did well. Like realistically, there were a couple really dominant groups that did a lot of recruitment pushing. A lot of spamming in world chat, and we all bolstered our rosters efficiently. We all took advantage of the opportunity.
But now alliance rankings became a thing, right? You can look at the rankings, see who's number one, see who's the top 10, what have you, and then there's
Hmm.
also the coveted 4%, 8%, and 12% attack bonus.
Yeah.
How did that affect Chaos Theory?
Well, there was a period there where us and Penthouses were sort of going back and forth. When Alliance raids first came out, they created an opportunity for a group like ours to compete. Because we were just barely out progressing PH, like before everybody was clearing on a weekly basis. We were getting like one extra level per week, sort of deal. Once it became that us and PH were clearing on a weekly basis, they just they have more active players in the PvP game modes, and they have realistically they just have more spenders
And when you say
and spend,
clearing,
spend
you're speaking of Alliance raid, right?
yeah, the alliance raid stage 20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just such a huge portion of the alliance contribution. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a it's a massive game changer for the ranking. So realistically, if you're on a server where somebody's clearing rank 20 and you're not, you're just never going to win first place.
It when we looked at the numbers, I did a video on the Alliance contribution, how the math works on it. Technically, money is the biggest. Well, not money. You can throw thousands of dollars into the cash shop, and it'll give you zero contribution. It is the 10 pulls that give you contribution, which that technically has the biggest portion possible, but with a limit, the alliance raid is a huge number. So if they're hitting 20 and you're hitting 15, it's going to take a lot of 10 pulls to make that deficit.
Yeah, I think we broke it down when it was somewhere in the realm of like 2 grand per level. So I mean, it's like a spending gap that you can close, but realistically, it's not reasonable for a group that isn't packed with spenders to like
Yeah,
cover that gap. And realistically, if you have those kinds of players on your roster that are spending like that, you're probably clearing rank 20
yeah,
anyway.
which is why
So
I was just trying to say that you're not making up that gap with battle challenge, dimension duel, things like that.
no. Spending and clearing are the ultimate decider on that leaderboard, which it's fine. That's huge portions of the game, so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's reasonable.
So now the whole first, second, third is kind of locked in. From my talk with NRG, it sounded like you, Penthouse, and X Men Gold were pretty solid top three, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, us and PH, we flip flopped for a while. PH recently has been able to maintain the top spot more weeks than not. Here and there we flip it because again we're all clearing. So ultimately the decider is like on the weekly basis who just has the slightly more active roster and whose group is potentially spending more. On character release weeks, companion release weeks, you might see it flip one way or the other. But realistically, there's a pretty structured top three on the server, I would say
Okay.
at this point.
And those three alliances were all from, at least had their beginnings in New Stark 1, it sounds like, right?
Oh yeah, we're always an NS1. We've always been an NS1 group. Yeah, for sure.
I find that interesting
Uh,
because over on the Hydra server, uh, the at least two of the top three, which would be Endgame and Alt Mace Cookie, were both from Hydra 1 as well.
hmm Well, you had an interesting dynamic because we were so competitive, but we worked kind of well together because we understood like each roster's sort of focus and desires well. Like PH just liked to compete at the top end in the PvP game modes. They didn't like to lose in PvP, so you understood that about them. And they had some of the best players in the world, on their roster, so they put together a really respectable effort. And then you had X-Men, who is basically just their primary function was to just fight people. Whether they won or lost, it really didn't matter. They just wanted to fight people. So we found like a kind of a nice niche like groove where we were respectable in PvP, but really focused hard on the PvE objectives in the game. We did extremely well. We world recorded in the first and the second invasion. We had a lot of really fun like PvE like experiences that were built into the game, and it attracted those types of players over to our roster that wanted to experience that kind of content.
Yeah, I was going to say the Alliance raid must have been a big thing for your alliance being the PvE focused group.
Yeah, I mean, we cleared the same day PH did, and they were world first. They played right at the reset. They had their guys ready to go right at midnight. To their credit, they were hungry. They wanted it a little bit more. I have like a lot of older guys, adults that they have daytime jobs and families and whatnot. Like staying up till 1 a.m. for a couple lobbies wasn't really in their best interest. But we cleared the same day. We had a lot of fun racing those guys. They took it seriously. They had they had guys transferring gear to different characters every single day to get
Oh,
extra reps in
wow.
with their fully. Yeah, they were dedicated, man. Like tons and tons of resources. Like hats off to those guys. They wanted it, so they went out and got it.
That's the first
That's
I heard of doing that. To be fair, swapping gear is a lot easier than swapping cards, as we all know.
Yeah, no, they put in a lot of work, man. They wanted it real bad.
All right, so that's we're kind of at present day at this point, right? How are things with Dark Zone and other things going with Chaos Theory in present day?
Uh you know, there was a really, really great group from New Stark 2, Disposable Heroes, that they they had they were in the top 3 conversation for a while, and they also merged into Penthouses not that long ago. So they had a phenomenal PvE group though. They were in Dark Zone every night. They were competing with us. They were the only group that really like truly competed with us in Dark Zone. So Dark Zone for a little while got interesting because when they merged into Penthouses, it kind of like bolstered their roster a little bit and like made them competitive in the game mode. But lately, it's kind of I don't know. I mean, our group's held number one in Dark Zone probably for the last month or two. We've got everybody titled really that wants it. It's fun. It's a competitive game mode. We enjoy it, but it's not really the meat and potatoes of the gaming experience. For the most part, we spend a lot of our time just doing alliance raids and just having fun and hanging out.
So making it 30 minutes instead of an hour wasn't a boon for you guys?
Oh, it was huge. It was definitely helpful. But I think just the environment's so different now because there's significantly less overlap in when people are running. So some people would show up like looking for that PvP experience that they knew would be there because PH loved to fight us and X-Men Gold would literally fight anybody. So you just had two really strong groups in there like looking to scrap. And now it's kind of just like we hop in, we kill a few bosses, we do an AR boss, we hop back in, we kill a few bosses, then we go do an AR boss, and then by the end of the night we have a bunch of points, and that's been good enough to sort of control the game mode for the
Yeah, as
last
long as you're able to get your
couple of months.
stat change cards and stuff, you're good, right?
Yeah, no, the resources are great. I think it was a great change. Honestly, the DZ changes did a lot for the utility of the game mode. Like it's way more beneficial now. It
I
stinks to lose the crispness, but
only went into that because I had the conversation with NRG. I really want it to go back to how it was pre-merge, where Dark Zone's open 24 hours, but there's
Mhm.
hot times where you get the
Yeah.
double points and the noon and night times.
Well, that was the cool thing was the Sigma group was the only daytime group that was running. So they had
Free
everybody that
reign.
wanted to run midday. Yeah, pre-merge. They just had everybody in the daytime that wanted to kill bosses and we had everybody at the nighttime that wanted to kill bosses and it was just a really easy go at it. And then, after the merge, and then they shortened the times and made it only at night time, and then they got rid of the double hour. So there's a lot of overlap. And then you had an interesting meta where people would run like super early or super late to avoid the aggression from other groups, but then like there was a lot of overlap in those time spots and people were like, you're coming in here just to grief us, and we're like, we're just trying to kill bosses. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, we're just playing the
Especially now
game,
with the cards, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy enough now to avoid, the conflict if you just choose a time that isn't contested. But, you know, I think that's just up to different, group administrators to like organize that or like be aware of when other people are running. Or reach out, I mean, let us know when you're running. I don't plenty
Sounds
of
good.
plenty of loot out there for everyone.
So you kind of ran us through the story of the server as things progressed. The only other topic that was brought up in my video with NRG that you did not get to give Chaos Theory's point of view on was he said there was a individual Iron Man that was kind of floating around and was public enemy number one. Can you
Yeah.
tell me what was
Yeah.
going on with that?
Yeah, I mean the gentleman in question, as much as I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt. Realistically, he was in our group, wasn't a good fit. He, oddly enough, he refused to donate to the alliance. That was like his breaking point. We had a policy because we were the first level 20 group in the game, so
Okay.
we were pushing really really hard to keep that lead, and so this was like he joined the group around level 18, 19. He was a late start player and he just refused to donate to the alliance. So I'm like, I'm sorry, man, but like we got to cut you. So we cut him, and then he goes to PH, and then he gets kicked out of PH for being toxic, which we like knew he was, but we were like trying to work with him. And then he ended up in X-Men, and he's those guys are they love to fight, man, whether it's with words or with fists or whatever it is. I mean, they're just constantly looking for
That is
fights.
one thing I hear about the New Stark City server that World Chat's always bumping.
It's a few individuals that really just they have very strong opinions about you know the world and minorities and women and things that like you'd hope that they'd do better for their groups, but
This is a video game,
yeah,
not that.
exactly. We're just here to play a game, man. We're just here to play a game. Let's just make this space fun for all of our players. That's what our job is as administrators. Our job is to create a fun and competitive environment for our players to succeed in.
All
No
right.
more, no less.
So you told us about your alliance and its claim to fame, which is still kind of mind-boggling that you can get effectively anyone a title on your squad if you really want to. It sounds like.
Within reason. I mean, all of our guys push. They do the work. There's nobody on our roster that like hasn't built a PBE kit and can do like a reasonable like 1 to 1.5 million DPS, which I think is a fairly reasonable benchmark because if you're playing the game mode correctly, if you could create about 20 seconds of opportunity, for a player to get in there and really like nuke a boss. And then
Mm-hmm.
at 30-40 million damage, then you play around that player's output. If you got to slow it down, if your top end guys have to slow it down, they slow it down. If your top end guys can go in and just nuke the boss because this guy has like a short head start, then you're good. But some weeks are tougher than others. But definitely something we've tried to do for our guys because they like it. Anything our player base wants to do, any goal they set in the game, our whole point is to try to get everybody to their finish line, whatever it is, whatever they set for themselves. We're just here to help support our team
And it
get to
sounds
wherever they want
like
to get to.
You gave us a brief history of the server and the eyes of chaos theory, which sounds like it's mostly in line with what NRG was telling me. So that's nice. A few small different things. Was there any thing else that you wanted to jump into?
Uh, no, I mean, there's a bunch of acquisitions. You know, you had a whole bunch of groups absorbing other groups. Realistically, like we've had one major merge with Dustis that went really well. We were supporting them after we merged with them, and they're still like a top 10 group. You know, you had God, PH has probably absorbed like 6 or 7 groups on our server by now. Chaos Legion, Disposable, the Order, the list kind of. I mean,
Well,
it is what it is.
actually, the question that I kind of have left right here is both of you, you and NRG, both told me about Elegy
Mhm.
doing pretty well. What ended up happening with Elegy?
Uh, It was sort of the same deal. So when we were talking with them, we had just finished securing the second world record on invasions. So we were feeling like really confident in our ability to like approach a group to like merge them into our roster. And they were very, very hardline. Like, we're a gaming community, we have a contribution to make. We don't want to sacrifice our players. So our merge was actually with Sigma Iron Legion, though. That was just before they merged into Elegy. So, like, it was basically the active Elegy player base. So, oddly enough, Sigma Iron Legion merges into Elegy anyway. And then, so, like, Energy has the same conversation with the same players, but under a different tag, basically. Like, they
Okay.
had become Elegy at that point already.
But Elegy's still around, or?
Yeah, they're a top 5 group. They push every week. Everyone, they play a different game. I don't see them pushing the top end of the game the same way that the other 3 groups do, but they're active, they talk a lot, they play a lot, they're part of the culture and part of the community. I mean, we've got friends in there, and just is what it is, you know what I mean?
Sounds good. And yeah, that's just both of you had mentioned Elegy, and I wanted to see what was going on with them because I haven't really seen them around myself. Haven't don't really know what was going on that end.
They just missed the top end. You know what I mean? Like, realistically, if you don't have a couple real big guys, you're not competing at like the top end of the game. Like, you only need a few to really create a competitive environment. But without those 2 or 3 big spenders that open up that pocket of content for you, like, you just don't have access. So that's sort of where they've been stuck. Is they lost their biggest player to PH,
Mm-hmm.
and then it all sort of snowballed out of control, and then all the leadership sort of quit, and then there was a new regime that sort of stepped in, but at that point all the other big players had either left to go to another group. A lot of them came to us after that big guy left for PH, because they just wanted to be part of a competitive environment, and that brought a lot of heat our way because we got more bodies,
Yeah,
but the
I can
biggest
see
guy
that.
went another direction. So, like, regardless of him being the first one to go and him going a different direction, we got all the heat for it. It was like, you poached all of our big players. We're like, I don't know what
Yep.
to tell you. We were getting them titles and they wanted to come play with us. Like, it is what it is, man. Like, you know, people want to play where they want to play. A game like this is such a big investment, both time and financially, to be competitive. Like, realistically, you can't fault a player for wanting to like just be part of an active competitive group that's pushing in-game content.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unrealistic to like hold them responsible for wanting to change their environment if the group that they're in isn't competing. And unfortunately, like, Sigma wasn't, and LG wasn't really in a position to compete.
As your playstyle evolves, if the alliance is not moving in the same direction, it makes sense.
Yeah, you gotta look out for you, man. I mean, you're either gonna fall in with a group that pushes the way you want to push, or you're gonna leave the game. And I would rather keep players playing the game. It's always
Agreed.
been my focus. It's just keep people happy, keep people playing, keep people supported.
Sounds good,
The
man.
chips.
Well, thank you very much for being on. And anyone, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of what Eros Trinidad had to say. And until next time, guys.